You know, every now and then a movie comes out that actually merits the description important. And I don't like throwing that around in reference to art because usually it's trite nonsense that art critics and people in the marketing industry like to use to try to get you to see something. The Sound of Freedom is actually important. It's got an important message. And I think that the more people are talking about something and raising public awareness and raising public consciousness of an issue, the more likely it is something actually happens regarding that issue. And there's a lot of historical precedent to back that up as reality. So, we're going to review Critical Drinker's review of Sound of Freedom. We're going to react to it, as it were. We saw the movie, so we're going to see what he has to say. And then we're going to talk about some of the pieces of shit who are maligning the movie. I'm sure on perfectly legitimate grounds.
Of course.
No, you don't need me to
Fucking shit! Why do I suck at everything? Why am I such a failure?
Oops.
tell you that it's been
There
a
we
pretty
go.
uninspiring year at the box office.
We're
No, you
professional
don't need me to
amateurs
tell
here.
you that it's been a pretty uninspiring year at the box office. Yeah, there's been success stories like Super Mario Brothers, Across the Spider-Verse, and Guardians of the Galaxy 3, but generally, 2023 has been a relentless cavalcade of disappointingly bland superhero films, unwanted remakes, and massive failures like Dial of Destiny, Shazam 2, The Flash.
Doesn't he mean dial-up of dysentery?
I thought it was dialysis of dysentery.
Oh, God.
Here's
Ash
looking at
and
you,
the little-
Kathleen.
Huh?
I said, here's looking at you, Kathleen.
God. That bitch should never be allowed near another fucking production.
No.
Mermaids. It seems like almost nothing is inspiring people to go to the movies these days. But then along comes a little low-budget movie like Sound of Freedom that I can honestly say I knew precisely nothing about until a few days ago, which seems to have ignited some kind of firestorm in the public consciousness and capitalised on the gaping hole left by Dial of Destiny's implosion, resulting in massive overperformance at the box office and a flood of emails practically demanding that I watch it now. Well, never let it be said that the drinker backs down from a challenge. And guess what? Sound of Freedom is really fucking good. In fact, I'd go so far as to say that it deserves the hype and praise that it's been getting, managing to tackle some pretty brutal subject matter in a sensitive and restrained way that never feels exploitative, delivering some excellent performances from a talented cast that don't overshadow their roles, and a storyline that feels neatly grounded in the true events that it's been based on. In short, it's exactly what you'd want in a movie like this, keeping you gripped and tense right until the end, and almost never descending into the kind of extravagant Hollywood tropes that often derail true stories like this.
Yeah.
So what the hell, let's dive right in and summarise the plots. The story centres around Tim Ballard, a Homeland Security agent tasked with monitoring and arresting child traffickers across the US. Needless to say, it's a tough job that takes its toll on the man's emotions, but the bigger problem is that for all the criminals they've put in prison, they've failed to recover any of their actual victims. Most of the time it's because they're outside Ballard's jurisdiction, hidden away in places like Mexico and Central America. But when Ballard finally manages to recover a young trafficking victim named Miguel, who begs him to rescue his sister, he hatches a plan to mount a massive sting operation that will take down the entire network and save dozens, possibly even hundreds of innocent children. The plan eventually sees him travel into Colombia and partnering up with a former cartel boss who's turned his life around, as the men work to set up a false front and gain the trust of the child traffickers. But with his superiors threatening to pull the plug and his partners growing suspicious of his intentions, can Ballard really hope to pull off the seemingly impossible? How much will he be willing to risk to complete his mission, and can he really hope to reunite Miguel with his lost sister? One of the things that really impressed me about Sound of Freedom was how restrained and grounded it all is. It's been classified as an action movie for some reason, but if you're expecting to see gunfights, explosions, and big blowout set pieces, you're definitely going to be disappointed because that's absolutely not what this film is.
Right.
It's more of a
I'd classify it as a psychological thriller.
Yeah, that or it's I mean, it's more of a drama kind of
Yeah,
thing.
it's like it's a drama. That's a better way of saying it. It's a drama with psychological thriller elements.
Yeah.
Because there's some parts where it gets really tense, but most of the time it's a slow burn build up kind of a thing. So yeah.
Well, I mean, because kind of like Michael Clayton, but with guns. As far as feel.
I didn't see that.
Well, because Michael Clayton was a dramatic piece, which you should see it. It's really good, but it was basically about how corporate is poisoning people, and anybody that says that they are is written off as a crazy person.
Fluoride in the water, folks.
Yeah, and which exactly that was pretty much the premise that they were going off of, and so
it's really fucking bad for you in case you didn't know. Like, it's not tinfoil hat. We have verified peer-reviewed research. It clogs your pineal gland, which prevents you from sleeping properly, which literally destroys your entire body really quick.
Yeah.
It's fucking poison.
But yeah, so basically that's kind of what this is like. That's what I thought as far as feel, was it's basically Michael Clayton with guns and even more intense subject matter.
You're definitely going to be disappointed because that's absolutely not what this film is. It's more of a tense character-driven drama, very much grounded in reality, where there's no big dramatic...
We're not streaming, but I'll give it to you. So for those
It
of
goes
you...
on the board!
So for those of you who don't come over to the Twitch stream, we have this thing we do over there.
By the way.
We have the Called It board. As you can see, I am absolutely dominating in the ranking up here.
Yep.
Kate is tied. Oh, no, Kate just broke the tie with the audience.
Yep.
6.
Yeah.
Huzzah!
6.
6.
But yeah. Okay. Yeah. But yeah.
She called it.
I did. Aha.
resolutions to the major plot points, no climactic battle that sees our hero fighting his way out of an impossible situation. What we get instead is the grinding reality of work like this, the negotiations and information gathering that goes on behind the scenes, the tough decisions and compromises that have to be made for the greater good, the personal risks and sacrifices that the job demands. You can see the toll it's taking on Ballard, the things he's forced to see that will probably haunt him for the rest of his life, the people he's forced to play nice with, when you can tell he'd much rather be pounding their faces into fucking mush. And it's all hammered home by some pretty harrowing scenes of the trafficking victims themselves and what they're subjected to. I mean, let's face it, seeing young kids being subjected to stuff like this is always going to be a tough watch, but to the film's credit, it never gets gratuitous or exploitative for pure shock value. It shows you just enough to leave you in no doubt about what's going to happen.
I was actually really intrigued by the restrained angle that they went with, because there's other movies that have been perfectly happy to show much worse stuff happening to kids. One scene that I saw as a kid that has always kind of stuck with me was the trailer attack scene from The Hills Have Eyes, where the girl's being diddled by the mutant. That one has always kind of stuck with me. And that scene in Hills Have Eyes is much worse than anything in Sound of Freedom. And I was surprised that they went with the restraint angle, because generally when you have a movie like this where there's obviously an important point they're trying to convey, their inclination is usually to shock value it, to really drive it home. But they didn't do that. They went with the subtle, artful approach, and it landed. So I was very happy about that.
But also, part of the reason why, and I really felt like this was the other reason why they went with that, was they didn't want people to be able to clip pieces of this movie out and use it as porn for themselves. Because that's the thing about movies that show the gratuitous things like that. Well,
cuties!
Yeah, that, or, the Hills Have Eyes thing. There are people that get off to those sorts of things, and so when you put that in a movie when, it's not necessarily necessary. That's what you're doing, is you're sneaking in kid diddling porn and calling it art when it's... Yep. And this proves that kind of thing is not necessary to be able to get your point across.
Right.
Exploitative for pure shock value. It shows you just enough to leave you in no doubt about what's going to happen or what just took place, without feeling the need to show the disgusting act itself. It walks a fine line, but it does it with sensitivity and good judgment, thank God. And big props to the actors for their work on this one. Jim Caviezel's had a bit of a weird career in his time, starring in big movies like The Passion of the Christ and The Count of Monte Cristo, but it's like he was never quite able to parlay those roles into mainstream success.
Or Deja Vu. He was a very scary villain.
Yes, he feels like he's been a star in waiting for like 20 years now, but I've got to say, he gives a knockout performance in Sound of Freedom. Like the rest of the film, he's restrained and subdued as Tim Ballard, but he can say a lot with just the slight change of expression or a haunted look in his eyes. He's a man that's seen things he'll never be able to unsee, and it weighs heavily on his soul. He's neatly balanced out by Bill Camp as a former cartel employee trying to atone for past mistakes. He provides a bit of much needed levity in what's obviously a pretty heavy movie, always chomping on cigars and cracking jokes, but underneath it all there's some pretty dark secrets that only come out near the finale. What's almost as interesting as the movie itself is the reaction it seems to have provoked from the mainstream media that seem determined to...
It's so reaction that the mainstream media that's not talking about the Maxine Giswell, however the fuck you say that pedophile's name, client list, the Epstein client list, however the fuck you say that bitch's name, that absolute witch, the Epstein client list, the same mainstream media that isn't pushing or investigating the client list, the same mainstream media that dismisses all conspiracy theories related to child trafficking and child endangerment by world elites, the same mainstream media that constantly tells you that Bill Clinton and Joe Biden did nothing wrong.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Big surprise why the mainstream media's played, what would you say, defense against this movie?
Yeah, the same mainstream media, Disney, that actually had the rights to this movie. This movie was actually shot 5 years ago, and Disney held on to the rights to it with no plans of releasing it, and it took these people having to raise enough money to get them to say, oh, well, yeah, that's enough money for us to sell you the rights.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, and then they took it to Amazon, and Amazon was like, no. And then they took it to Netflix, and Netflix, who released Cuties, was really like, no. So, they had
What we're saying is Hollywood is full of pedos!
Yeah.
They diddle kids!
Yep.
But like a lot, though!
Like a lot, though.
And don't mistake my boisterous theatrics and her laugh as dismissive of the subject. We're fucking disgusted.
No, it's like a...
But it's one of those things where if I don't act ridiculous and laugh, I'll be enraged! So here we are, folks!
Yep.
Tear it down at any cost. I mean, you'd think a movie that sheds light on the hidden nightmare of child trafficking would be a pretty admirable cause worthy of support, but apparently not for the people who applauded Cuties as a bold piece of artistic expression. Why don't they want this movie to succeed? Why is Hollywood so defensive about it? It almost gets you thinking, doesn't it? Either way, regardless of the media...
It couldn't be that the United States is one of the number one, in fact, actually is the number one consumer of child sex.
Don't say consumer, say perpetrator.
Well, yeah, but yeah.
A firestorm raging around it, Sound of Freedom is an excellent movie that kept me thoroughly gripped from start to finish. It's a film that reminds us that even though there's a lot of bad people in this world doing the worst things imaginable, there are also still good men fighting to bring them to justice. And maybe that's something we could all do with remembering. Anyway, that's all I've got for today. Go away now.
Yeah.
Yeah, and when cronies in the mainstream media come out and say shit like this, folks.
Yep.
You really have to wonder what kind of person writes this about a movie that's trying to get people to do something about child sex trafficking. Even if your genuine, honest opinion was that the movie wasn't good, you could still say that in a way that respected what the movie is trying to accomplish, instead of obvious gotcha smear headlines that try to dissuade people from seeing the movie in the first place. But what do you expect from people who are big-time paid movie critics, and they don't even have a basic fucking understanding of English? Instead of only catching pedophiles, as he has done nearly 30 times before, he goes to Colombia and undercover to help rescue children. And undercover.
Yep.
Sir, did you pass 5th grade English, or are you just too fucking lazy to edit the articles that you get paid an exorbitant amount to write? You can come read this fucking Roger Ebert Sound of Freedom review. It's a joke. They take the realm of opinion to the utter extreme, lying almost, to as close as you can possibly come to saying something that is a lie while still having it covered under the umbrella of opinion.
Yeah, his whole thing of, if the message could have just gotten out of the way, it could have been a movie. Well,
it's like,
first of all...
Well, it's funny you say that, because everyone in the audience thought it was a pretty good movie.
Because the story, this is not your typical message first movie, in the sense that, like what Pure Flix does, or Great American Family Network, or
fuck all of that. It's not like it's a message first movie like Don't Look Up, where Hollywood constantly beat you over the fucking head with, look, the impending doom that no one's doing anything about.
Yeah.
It's just like climate change, isn't it? How it's so obvious and no one's doing anything about it.
Oh my gosh.
I don't know, because I didn't see his review of it if he did one, but I bet Nick Allen absolutely garbled the cock of Don't Look Up. And he has the nerve to say this is a message-first movie.
Yeah,
go ahead and look it up.
Yeah.
And in fact, you know what? Hang on. Nick Allen, Don't Look Up review. Oh.
Oh, wow. 1.5. Surprise. Okay.
I'm pleasantly surprised that he actually has some level of consistency.
Because that was a garbage movie.
It was funny because of how bad it was. It was one of those movies that was like, wow, this really sucks. I'm laughing because of how stupid this is.
God. We had to gargle Mind Wash after.
DiCap, definitely the worst project I've ever seen DiCaprio in. And same for this gal whose name I can't remember.
Yep.
So, okay. I credit where it's due. I apologize, Nick Allen. You rightfully called this out as a piece of shit. Fair dues.
Great. Yeah. Gosh.
So, our review of Sound of Freedom is this. It's a really good movie. There were some things, sure, that could have been a little better. I think that maybe a few scenes, the actors could have reshot the scene to get the pacing and the tension a little bit better. There were a few things that maybe a little more action would have served to hook the viewer in a little bit more. And they could have leaned heavier into the detective, crime drama angle of it too, and that would have helped. But for lacking all of those fine tunings that could have been done, it was still a really good movie. And obviously the message is super important. Go see it. And if you can't go see it, you can go to their website and buy someone else a ticket. And if nothing else, tell people to go see it. And when you hear someone shitting on it for absolutely no reason, Ask them, hey, why are you maligning a movie that's trying to get the message out about, saving kids? All right. This has been 20 minutes of yelling. Sorry for that.
Yeah.
Not really.
No.
Welcome to the adventure.
Welcome to the adventure.